Hi, I'm Aaron.
I'm Taryn.
I'm Anna.
I'm Nina.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Lauren. And today we're going to be talking about our interviews. Okay, guys, first question. How did listening to these interviews and asking these interviews make you feel?
For me, it actually made me feel pretty hopeful. I loved just listening to what people are working on in the environmental science field, and it just kind of made me see how many people are working towards these issues and trying to come up with solutions, and just the number of people that we have trying to fight climate change and stuff, and it just made me feel kind of less alone and just a lot more that there's a lot of people who care about this.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so, personally, if I'm talking about the person that I experienced, who was interviewed, who was Michael Rollins, I think for me, it definitely made me feel a little bit nostalgic just because he was, a big part of my high school experience. So to get to talk to him again and to, hear what he thinks about various topics surrounding, environmental justice, conservation, forestry, etc., was, really impactful just personally, because knowing someone, for a super long time, just as a teacher, though, you don't really know what they're thinking besides just material and content for the class. So to hear his perspective on all these topics and subjects that I'm interested currently, and I'm going to go into this field of environmental science in the future, to get his take was inspiring, and I really think it benefited me just in my mind, thinking about what career paths I might want to take and what I might want to do with my education. So I just think it's made me feel really hopeful again.
Oh, yeah. What about you guys? How did it make you feel?
I interviewed Courtney and Corey.
Yes, those were really different interviews. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was, so Corey was a lot more pessimistic than Courtney was about the future and climate change in general, but something that was common among both of them was just kind of putting the responsibility on us as students, and listening, or I didn't get around to listening to your Lauren's, but Mr. Rollins too is kind of I don't know if it makes me feel good, but it made me feel some added responsibility, this is my home, and it was inspiring to hear what the fight before us had been, and sort of where I need to bring that.
That's honestly one of my pet peeves is when older
Me
people
too.
are oh, it's your job, and it's no, I don't really have the time or resources. You could also be doing this.
Yeah, older generations are always we're the generation to save the world and stuff. And yeah, we do have to, but it's I didn't want that on me, and now I have this huge issue that we have to solve.
Yeah, all thanks to them.
Facts. Okay, guys, next question. How is this process? What are you taking away from this?
I helped interview Corey, and her interview made me think about the broad variety of career paths that you can take, and she went down probably 30 paths with volunteer work, and then she is on a bunch of boards, and being a woman in environmental science, she definitely is a trailblazer in her field, and that made me feel hopeful for my path. I don't have to have any right answers for where I'm going, but just taking opportunities as they come seems to serve people well.
I think she said she was the first woman on the Pacific Fisheries Management Council in 40 years.
She's the youngest and the fifth woman on the board. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, very fascinating stuff.
Okay. Anyone else? Cool.
I kind of touched on that in my rant earlier.
What moment stood out to you in another group's podcast? Some of the pessimism stood out to me a little bit. That kind of got to me, but I think the general hope in a lot of the other ones balanced. Made me feel, it was oh, I feel not great, and then I was oh, I do feel really great. Don't know which way to go. Yeah.
Because was it if you lose hope, then capitalism has already won.
Yeah, it's cool to get like various perspectives from people in a similar field, even though like their own independent like decisions and ideas about the same subjects are kind of different. It's cool.
Mm-hmm. Create a conversation with different opinions, which is good.
I know a lot of you guys didn't get the chance to listen to my podcast, but if you do, I highly encourage it. Vince had a lot of really good words on hope, and he's like someone who brings me a lot of hope because he like wasn't really supposed to be a scientist and is now like a scientist doing this because he cares about climate change, and that brings me a lot of hope in this world for other people.
Sick.
Okay, anyone else have an answer for that question? Fair. What in these interviews connected back to class topics, and how did you guys bring in your classwork to this?
All of the interviews connected with like indigenous knowledge, which was pretty cool, and it just shows like how much more that's becoming a part of the narrative of environmental science, and it should be like a huge part of environmental science. So I guess it's really great that all of these people we talked about indigenous knowledge, and just that everyone is aware of it more than probably like 5-10 years ago.
I think for me, one of the things that I really got from this class was a lot more education around the social justice side of environmental science. So when I went to talk to Michael Rollins about, or like when I brought him the questions and we went to interview him, I think I tried to incorporate a lot more of the social side of environmental science into what I was asking him, because previously I think I was more focused on like land conservation and like the actual science behind this field, when in reality like this field is a total duality between the social side and the sciences side, which blend into each other, like, and they overlap a lot. So you can't really solve one without the other. So I think that just like broadening my horizons on the social justice side of this really expanded my knowledge in general.
Yeah, I think all the podcasts kind of went around the idea of social justice, like whether we talked about it directly or indirectly, it just kind of all brought it back to social issues that are in environmental things, and that just kind of made me aware that it is something that we need to think about and something that's like in the field of environmental science right now.
And it's great that's becoming a part of the field, because in the past it's kind of not really been a part of environmental justice. So I'm really glad that social justice has started to like kind of incorporate with environmental.
Yeah, I really love talking with Courtney, because the ONRC is a really cool place, and like a lot of their studies are focused on integrating like community perspectives, and like I think pollution is colonialism, and a lot of like the indigenous ways of knowledge topics that we covered, they sort of informed where I wanted to drive the conversation. And because and some of the really interesting things were like, clear cutting is all like devastation, but on the coast it was like so shocking to learn that the communities there saw clear cutting as like an opportunity for deer, which were really significant. And like just learning about the relationship learning about how the relationship is growing between managers and communities was really interesting.
Oh yeah. It's so interesting to have that conversation about like, I think like justice work, and then also be in the scope of like only interviewing academics. But I thought that was like we went into it with that intention of asking people about their career paths, and we were aware of the kind of scope of it going in.
Yeah.
Overall though, super informative experience, and I think we all gained a lot of knowledge and perspective on different career paths and both sides, social justice side and the environmental conservation side of environmental science as a whole. So I think we all can all say we benefited greatly from our podcasts and our interviews.
And kind of gave us an image of what our future could look like, which is cool.
Hell yeah.
Made me think a lot about like the accessibility part of environmental science. Like a lot of people think that they are excluded from environmental science, and honestly that's kind of what it feels like a lot of the time in like our field as a whole. So it's kind of we touched on it a little bit in our interview about how to get younger people involved in environmental science early to like build a new generation of scientists, you know, because obviously we're going to be around to see our world through the highs and lows that are to come, but that was definitely very inspiring.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anyone else have anything else to say?
I think that's it.
Woo! Good job, team. Thank
Yay.
you.